Welcome to Chabad of YouTube. Another chapter of lessons in Kuntreis, Heichaltzu. All kinds of inyonim, ideas about Ahavas Yisrael and how to love your fellow Jew. Different approaches. For those that have been watching thus far, please like and subscribe to this channel. Hopefully some guys will join on Zoom, but got to keep moving forward. Let's start. We're holding by chapter 13. If you have the mimer, lessons in Kuntreis Heichaltzu, we're holding on page 98. So the previous chapter explained that there are two approaches to avoda: divine service, service through joy, and service through humility. Up until just last chapter, everything's been about bitzel. And just now, the new concept of simcha was brought about. So that chapter discussed the first approach, oifen ha-base, the second approach to divine service. Hu avoda bivichinas shiflus davka uviv vichinas mirirus al richukoi. So it stems from humility and bitterness because of one's distance from God. Behainu kasher hu mima re dichush bana. An example that a person conducts himself as a master of accounts. Bechol pirate machashava dibur umase sheloi asher loi laHashem hema. He keeps track of and analyzes every detail of his thought, speech, and action, discerning and being mindful of those that were not directed towards God. Ba'avkam loi b'maaseh isur chas v'shalom. This includes not only actions and also thought and speech that are forbidden, heaven forbid. Ki im b'devarim hamutarim she'einam l'shem shemayim. But also those that are permitted but are not carried out for the sake of heaven. Shehem gam kain ra chuli, for they are also bad. Okay, so it's important that we're discussing this whole cheshbon, making a master of accounts, especially like this is an ideal time with it being close to Rosh Hashanah, the new year. There's an idea that in the month of Elul, you literally look back past your entire last year and you make an account and think about and contemplate ways of how to fix everything that you did in the last year. So likewise, when you're doing this, you're contemplating everything that you thought about, you spoke about, and everything you did. You do this on a regular basis. And hopefully you didn't do things that were forbidden, chas v'shalom. But we're all humans, and it's always time to do tshuva. Welcome, Aaron. As always, one of the first guys in this year. As the Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya, our material world with all its contents is called the world of klipos and sitra achra. Klipa means shell or peel. It refers to spiritual forces that conceal godliness, like a shell or a peel covers a fruit. Like the peel of an orange is covering the fruit, so you can't eat it. It's concealing the goodness inside. So klipa would be concealing godliness, which is a revealed good, and you can't see God. with all the darkness. Sitra Achra means the other side. An example, something that identifies itself as separate from godliness. Kalipa and Sitra Achra do not necessarily refer to something sinister or outwardly harmful, just something that is not directed towards godliness. With this understanding, the Alter Rebbe gives us a new definition of the term ra. Generally, it's translated as bad. But ra does not mean wicked, malevolent, or vile. It means non-godly. This is one of the Alter Rebbe's unique contributions in the Tanya. Until then, existence was defined in three categories: mitzvahs or other obviously positive activities, sins, transgressions of God's will, and C, reshus, activities left to man's discretion. Reshus means you have permission to do that. The latter was considered a gray area, neither good nor bad, such as like eating ice cream. It's not good nor it's bad. Maybe like playing a video game could be neither good nor bad, provided when you do it, I don't know. But when you learn Tanya, there's a whole nother aspect of these gray area activities. The Alter Rebbe explained that whether reshus is good or bad is determined by man. When a person carried out a permitted physical activity for a spiritual intent, an example, he eats in order to derive the energy to serve God. The eating is a positive spiritual activity, similar to a mitzvah. Now, usually people think in their head like video games are just completely bad. But I'll tell you what, when I was in Lubavitch Yeshiva, it was used actually in the yeshiva as an incentive to get kids to behave and do well in their studies. So a kid would learn Torah all many hours, and then they have just a little bit of time, I don't know, maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes or so, to play video games for a reward to behave. So if the video game or the candy or the something that a child finds to be delightful is used as an incentive to learn more Torah or to do more mitzvahs, then that thing in itself is a positive thing. But if somebody's just wasting his whole life away playing video games and there's not even a positive thing, it's not a reward for his good thing he's doing. It's not used for something amazing. He's just doing because he wants to, and he's indulging in it, then it's not really a positive thing. However, if he eats merely to fulfill his appetite, he indulges in any of the pleasurable things, even if he recites a bracha before and afterwards when he's eating, he is doing something separate from God. Now, we're not saying it's bad, but it's not really godly. It's not holy. That's why it's on the concept of Sitra Achra, the other side. It's not holy, or I should have said raw. It's that raw meaning it's not wicked and malevolent, but it's not really holy. V'chengam ba siyas hatoiv b'kiyum hatoira umitzois enoi kidvare lemeherve. Similarly, such a person should also critically examine even his positive actions in the performance of the Torah and its mitzvahs. Through such introspection, he will realize that in truth his observance is unsatisfactory. V'chayadua dechol mitzvah yesh ba kavona piratis ba'avoda. As is well known, every mitzvah has a specific purpose in a person's divine service. Uchmoy tefillin heim l'shabed halev v'hamoyach. For example, tefillin is intended to subjugate one's mind and heart. Shemoiche v'liboy yiyu lahavaya levadoi chuli. To direct the mind and heart to God alone. So there needs to be an actual intention when he puts on tefillin and davens. V'dalad minim shebalulav hem sheyiyeh bivechinas achdus. ve'es roig rashe, save voice al tivoyeni regel gaiva chuli. Similarly, the four species of the lulav are intended to motivate one towards the concept of unity. Back to the Havas Yisrael. And the esrog to the service of humility as implied by its name esrog, which serves as an acronym for the verse, Al tivoyeni regel gaiva. Let not the foot of pride come against me. This is pretty amazing because Sukkot is literally a month away or so. And now we have an idea of Achdu's collaboration with Sukkot. And if you think about it, what is the whole thing of the shaking the lulav and the estrog and the four species represent? You combine these four things. The lulav represents a Jew that is perfect in his Torah and his mitzvahs. And then you have I forgot all the species exactly what they do, but one of them has only smell, and one of them has only taste, and then one of them has nothing. And you have four species that have only certain qualities, and it represents a Jew. One Jew could be filled with Torah and mitzvahs. Another Jew could be filled with only mitzvahs. Another Jew could be filled with just Torah. I think, the lulav represents the Torah, that's for sure. And you combine all four species, and it represents that no matter where a Jew is holding, he should still have achdus in collaboration with another Jew. No Jew is better than the other. You need all types of Jews to be combined together to be proper. Just because the esrog has the best quality of everything doesn't mean you toss out everything else. All Jews are important, even though they may be lacking at the moment. In fact, the esrog has to have an effect on everybody else, like a hashpah, so everybody else can be uplifted. Moreover, there's a general intention present in all the mitzvahs. To accept the yoke of God's sovereignty. Perek Mem Aleph Base, I think it's chapter 41 and 42 of Tanya, Hakavanos Nois Hanis Karois Leel. See Tanya chapter 41, which discusses both of the above mentioned types of intentions. Ve'im ein asiyas hamitzvos be'oifen kazeh. If one does not fulfill the mitzvahs in this manner, an example with a proper intention, ve'oise rak bikrirus uvederech mitzvahs anoshim milumada, but instead performs them coldly as a matter of habit, his divine service is unsatisfactory. One might be yotzi, he might have fulfilled his obligation if he davens, but if he doesn't have kavana, it's not satisfactory. It's not the way it was meant to be done. You might get the mitzvahs to be considered done because action is the main thing, but Tanya teaches very clearly that a mitzvah without intention is like a body without a soul. When one is mindful of all the above, he will surely feel humble. Ubifrat kishemis boinen bigdulas v'roimemus ha'ef soif shelafi amitas oitzem gidulasoi v'roimemusoi gam ha'avoida ha'amitis hi kla mamish. This is particularly true when one meditates on the greatness and exaltedness of God in his infinity. For when considering his awesome greatness and exaltedness as it truly is, all service performed by man, however genuine it is absolutely of no significance at all. So God doesn't really truly need us to do his mitzvahs. He's doing it for our own benefit. Indeed, it can be likened to sin. Uchmoy al derech mashol melech gadol v'noira. Hare kishe oivdim oisoy sheloi lefi erech gedula soy. Take, for example, a great and awesome king, were one to serve him in a manner unbefitting of his stature. Harezesh shiflus lefanav kikol avoida tziricha liyois lefi erev hanevar. It would be considered demeaning to him, for every type of service must be appropriate to the station of the one served. V'hasherus lifnei adam pashut k'moy lifnei melech gadol. The service offered to a simple person cannot be compared with that rendered to a great king. Uchesheyavoid lifnei melech k'moy ha'avoida lifnei adam pashut. If the service appropriate for a simple person were offered to the king, harezeh lechet yechashev vehu k'moyred b'malchus. If the service appropriate for a simple person were offered to the king, it would be considered sinful and rebellious. Shemashpil kivoidoi chuli, for it demeans his honor. Ubedugma kazois yuvan lemaila. So this analogy helps us understand our relationship with God. Shelefi oitzem gedulas beroim mumus ha'ein soif. Asher ein cheker ligdula soy kilo haregam avoidas hatzadikim hayoiser gedolim einoi be'erech oitzem gedula soy kilo chuli. So, in the face of the awesome greatness and exaltedness of God's infinity, that is utterly boundless and unfathomable. Even the service of the loftiest tzaddikim is utterly incomparable and disproportionate to his awesome greatness. So everybody can't even reach a fracture, even a fingernail of the greatness of Hashem. So nobody would technically be great enough for Hashem. This is just to show how, no matter how great a tzaddik is, the Rebbe, the Baal Shem Tov, Rab Nachman of Breslov, no matter how great the tzaddik is, he can't even compare to the greatness of Hashem. V'zehu ma shekol echad v'echad oimer haviduyim ba'seres yemei teshuva ashamnu chuli. Consequently, during the 10 days of Teshuvah, everyone recites the confessional prayer beginning, "We have transgressed." Gam tzadik gamor k'moy Moshe Rabbeinu alav hashalom. Haya tzarich loymar viduyim ba'seres yemei teshuva. Consequently, during the 10 days of Teshuvah, everyone recites the confessional prayer beginning, "We have transgressed." Indeed, even a completely righteous man like Moshe Rabbeinu would have had to recite the confessional prayers during the 10 days of Teshuvah. V'hainu mipnei shelefi amitis gedula soy v'roimemu soy gam ha'avoida ha'amitis lechet yechashev chuli. Because in the light of God's true greatness and exaltedness, even genuine service is considered a sin. Chet, so chet translates as sin, also has the meaning lack, as in the verse, V'hayisi ani uvni shloimoi chataim. Vayehisi anu uvnei shlomo chatim. Oh, I just said it again in just English. I guess it was transliterated right next to the Hebrew. I and Shlomo, my son, will be lacking. Service is considered fitting when it is commensurate and proportionate to the stature of the one being served. When one considers God's true greatness, no service can be considered as appropriate and befitting. Nothing that a mortal man can do can be service that is becoming to God. Even with regard to a mortal king, our sages relate that a person who makes an inappropriate movement in the presence of the king is liable for execution. When honestly considering our conduct, even when it is ostensibly directed to God, each one of us can find ourselves lacking, having moments in which we performed inappropriate movements. In truth, even the most perfect service man can render is an inappropriate movement. There's just no way. I don't care if you're Moshe Rabbeinu, if you're Avram Avinu, not any man is completely perfect. They all have limitations, and that limitation in itself, in comparison to Hashem and His greatness, is considered to be a sin. V'zehu she'amru Razal al pasuk vayikoid arza. This concept is alluded to in our sage's comment on the verse. And he, Moshe, bowed to the ground and prostrated himself. Midas emes ra'ah. They explain that he bowed down because he saw God's attribute of truth. Ki mi yachol lamoid livnei amita soichuli. So, and who can stand before God's truth? One second. Uchmoy shekasuv b'makoim acher, as explained elsewhere. Be'ayin ma shekasuv mize b'dibor hamas chil bayom hashmini atzeres kimedume reish nun aleph. Note the mimer entitled Bayom Hashemini Atzeres. It would appear in 5651. That was the Jewish calendar year. That's probably 18. Oh, it's in the 1800s. Ach, nevertheless, God does not demand such a standard of each individual. On the contrary, He adapts His demand of man according to man's potential. I think 5651 is 18. It's 1881. That was the year it was. Hine Amru Razal B'midrash Rabba al Pasuk Shor Oy Kesev. Thus, on the verse beginning, when an ox or a sheep, which prescribes the laws of sacrificial offerings, our sages comment in Midrash Rabbah. Kishehu mivakesh enoi mivakesh ela lefi choichan. When God demands, He only demands according to man's potential. God takes man's limitations into consideration. Yeah, so just because Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't do like unlimited things, Hashem takes that into consideration. And everything that Moshe did in his lifetime still renders him to be a tzaddik. And even those of us that aren't tzaddikim, Hashem considers our limitations. Welcome, Mark, or Menachem Mordechai. I put you on mute just because you were coming in coughing or whatever. If you want to talk, you can unmute yourself. Ki lefi amitis gedula soy be'emes. אי אפשר להיות עבודה כזוי כלול ואינו מבקש רק שתהיה העבודה באמת שלא יכולי. Since commensurate with his true greatness, it is utterly impossible for there to be a voda that is befitting. Accordingly, God asks only that each person's voda be true according to the standards of truth appropriate for that individual. Umikol makoin leis min ha'itim kesheis boinin bezeh yismarer bezeh benafshoi chuli. However, although God has, as it were, adjusted his standards as consideration of man's frailty, even so, at times, a person must focus on core questions. Who is God? How must man serve him? When a person meditates upon these questions, he will be motivated to feelings of bitterness within his soul. V'chol shekein kishemis boinin sheha'avoda bikiyum ha'torah u'mitzvos einoi kifi emes sheloi gam kein chuli. Certainly, such contrite feelings should be aroused when one contemplates that his service in the observance of the Torah and its mitzvahs is not true, even according to the standards of truth appropriate for him. Not only is his divine service inadequate when viewed on an absolute scale, even according to the standards that have been adjusted for him specifically, he is lacking. Kanizkir le'el, as explained above at the beginning of the chapter. V'chol shekain kishemis arvim machashavos zarois ba'avoda soy chuli. How much more so does this apply if in the midst of a person's divine service, extraneous thoughts, an example, thoughts of matters inappropriate for the divine service in which he is involved, occur to him? So if someone was thinking about just inappropriate things, ubifrat kishemoitze inyanim bedibor umase asher loy lahashem, and particularly if he finds aspects of his speech or action that were not directed towards God. She'al yedei ze misrachek me'oid me'elokus besachlis harichuk chuli, because through such conduct he distances himself utterly from God. Umikol ze mismarmer benafshoi me'oid uvoiche b'mar nafshoi al oitzem richukle chuli. As a result of the above, he will be very embittered within his soul and will cry out bitterly because of his awesome distance from God. Kitzer, summary. Avoida b'shiflus mehis boidinus berichukoi uveoifen avoida soy. The avoida of humility is evoked through meditation on one's distance from God. From God in the inadequate manner in which one serves him. Uvifrat be'erech hanevar, especially in relation to the infinite greatness of the one being served, in which instance everything man does is inadequate. So when one realizes how far away he is from Hashem and how incomparable he is from Hashem, then he can get more of a sense of humility. And when one actually gets humility, as we learned in the previous chapters, through self-nullification, that is how you can truly have a sense of Ahavas Yisrael. Ubifrat be'erech hanevar, especially in relation to the infinite greatness of the one being served, in which instance everything man does is inadequate. Harehu choite ufoishea mamish. Indeed, he is deemed an actual sinner and transgressor as a result of such thoughts. That's pretty much the end of the chapter. How are you guys doing? One second.